Yeah. So we are live now. Namaskar. Good morning. Welcome in today's Sustainable Saturday session. So I am Siddharth, your host, and today we have Jehu Nadar with us. So Jehu has a bachelor degree in zoology, and he's working with the Green Yatra. So today he will talk about algal bloom. So what are the causes of algal bloom development, and how we can reduce the growth of algal bloom, and how we can clean the water bodies by reducing the quality of algal bloom. So he will talk on this topic today. So Jehu, please start your presentation.
Yeah, so good morning everyone and good morning Siddharth sir. So I'm Jehu Nadar and today I'll be discussing about algal blooms in ponds. Actually, algal bloom in freshwater, but algae are focused on are dominate stagnant waters like ponds and lakes. So we'll focus more on those kind of water bodies, and we will see a brief description about them and the causes which lead to a algal bloom and the solutions which are currently available for us. So, introduction. So, what is algae? Algae is an informal term. It is not a scientific term. It's a common vernacular term used to describe a diverse range of organisms. The common consensus regarding the word is that it should be a photosynthetic organism and a eukaryotic organism. So that is that the organism should be able to produce its own food using sunlight, and it should be processing a well-developed nuclear wall. So that's the basic description of an algae. Uh, Large number of families across different phylums are present, not phylums, different genus are present in algae, and even those who study algae usually get confused between them. And it's a single patch of algae can contain more than 5 to 6, 10, 12 species living symbiotically with each other. So it's a huge field of study. So even the experts get irritated sometimes to describe algae. So it's a vast term. So and the common it's basically agreed that most of the algae present today are descended from cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria is a primitive form of bacteria. It is a prokaryon. That is, it does not have a well-developed nucleus, and cyanobacteria is what we will be dealing with today. Cause cyanobacteria is the most cause of most of the harmful algal bloom, HAB, which we will see in the later slides. And algae is a natural, it is a good organism when present in limitation in an ecosystem. It does play an important role in our ecosystem in which it's present. Algae are found in both freshwater and marine water. And when situations get out of hand, then the problem begins with algae, or else it is a quite a good organism, and we have tremendous economical benefits from it also. So I'll go through them. As you can see in the let's begin with cyanobacteria. It's in this middle slide, the middle image, the photo present in the middle. It's of a cyanobacteria. It is a pretty famous one. It's called spirulina. Spirulina is a economically important algae. It is used for as fodder for animals, and nowadays even humans are consuming them, and it is reported to be very healthy. It also contains many micro nutrients which are essential for well development of human and animals which consume them, and it is very easy to uh, produce this kind of to grow this kind of algae, as you have to do nothing literally. It will bloom itself. It will grow take care of itself, and you just need to harvest it. You just need a freshwater body to grow it, and you can harvest it literally shoots up. The population literally shoots up every time, and it's a cheap source of fodder for animals nowadays. It is considered a healthy alternative food source for humans also. And so what the point is that cyanobacteria or any other algae is not harmful when utilized properly. They are known to show huge benefits for us and for environment as a whole. And so the one in the left is a diatomous algae. Diatomous algae are special because they prepare their cell wall using silica. Silica is the same mineral or element which is present in glass. So as you can see, the algae, body of the algae is inside that golden brown colored liquid which you see is the algae itself, and the transparent edges around it, those beautiful rhombus shaped structure, which looks like it is made of glass. It is made of silica, so basically glass. It is that is basically our diatomaceous algae looks like. When this kind of algae bloom in a lake or freshwater body, the lake or the freshwater body turns brown, golden brown, something like that. And it is usually not considered that harmful compared to cyanobacteria. The thing is, cyanobacteria produce some kind of toxin which is harmful for animals and humans when consumed. So that's the basic difference between them. Diatomous algae are very important because what happens is that they sequester carbon. uh, we usually think that trees sequester carbon more. The real thing is that in the vast wide ocean, this kind of algae are the ones which use the plenty of available sunlight which hit the ocean surface. They convert it into food source, like they convert it into cell wall, those sort of structure. And when they die off, they take the carbon with them to the depths of the ocean, which are then locked up into the ocean bed for many millions of years, because ocean bed is so deep that it doesn't even come out for many years, unless a earthquake or something like that happens and these nutrients get released. But usually this kind of algae, they lock up carbon for millions of years when they die off. And diatomous algae is also used in industries. As you can see that when this algae dies off, its cell wall remains, the silicate cell wall remains, and this it is in the form of a powdery substance which is used for polishing, basically like a sandpaper. It is the what you can say, that texture is similar to a sandpaper, like extremely smooth sandpaper. So it is used for polishing in industries and those sort of stuff. And in the extreme right, you can see a lady from South India. Uh, she is holding a macroalgae. Macroalgae are algae which are highly developed, which possess body structure like body which are easily visible to the naked eye. So this lady is holding a algae which she harvested. Lately, for the past 4 or 5 years in Tamil Nadu, initiative has been taken by the government and the NGOs to begin this kind of algae growing projects with the local fishermen communities to provide side income for those people, because of the reducing number of fishes available to these fishermen. Their wives usually prepare the NGO or those government bodies give them a raft made up of blocks, and they tie they tie algae in them, and they leave them in the ocean, and this algae multiply. Uh, for some, for example, a 2 kg algae can produce 200 kg algae in a few weeks, and this algae are then harvested to produce algin is a binding component used in toothpaste, ice cream. It's like a basically jelly kind of stuff. And agar is the stuff which we use in our laboratories to grow medium as a culture medium for microorganisms. And recently a company in Bangalore has used this algae to produce bioplastic, the biological plastic, which is biologically degradable, which you can consume also. So so algae are in high demand, microalgae are in high demand, all kind of algae are in high demand basically. So do we
Jehu,
consider? Yeah.
just I have one query. So,
Yeah.
can we consider algae as a useful for removal of atmospheric carbon dioxide because they are doing photosynthesis?
Yeah. In fact, algae work harder than the rainforest or the tropical forest, which we see in our land terrestrial systems. Because algae have unlimited access to sunlight. Because the open ocean surface is open, sunlight hits directly, and this algae have no competition there basically. So they sequester carbon, which we can never imagine. Like the terrestrial
Oh,
plants can never do that kind of
okay.
sequestration. Yeah.
So algae can also help for reduce the impact of climate change then.
Yeah, they play a large role actually. Yeah. So what does a freshwater ecosystem mean? Freshwater ecosystem in the sense that stagnant waters. I'm specifically focusing on stagnant water bodies. Rivers don't get algal blooms, and rivers keep on changing. They're like the speed and the flow, the nutrient level keeps on fluctuating. So algal bloom does not usually occur there, as algae prefer stagnant water. So we will be focusing on lake ecosystem or pond ecosystem. A pond ecosystem, a mature pond ecosystem usually contains floating plants which are present in the water surface. Immersed plants have their roots anchored in the substrate. However, the leaves are outside the water. For example, a good example would be lotus. Its roots are stuck in the anchored in the soil, but the leaves and flowers are above the water surface. And submerged plants are completely submerged. They grow completely submerged in the water. Their roots are anchored into the soil, and the leaves, the entire vegetative part of and entire body is submerged in the water all year round. So these are the three kinds of plants. And yeah, I forgot about floating plants. Floating plants have their roots dangling in the water surface. The roots are not anchored, and the leaves they basically function as tiny boats floating on the water surface. Immersed and floating plants play an important role in controlling algal bloom. We will see why I said that. And aquatic fauna also keep the thing is that algae is a villain, and this uh, plants are the heroes. It's not like that. When algae reduce if when we plant this kind of plants, these plants also have the capacity to overtake the surface of the lake, and these plants also can cover the lake surface and cause oxygen anoxic conditions. So this aquatic fauna is also important. These animals, what they keep is that they keep everything in check. The plants, the algae, they feed on them, and they keep everything, the ecosystem, in complete balance. So if any one of this in this chain breaks down, so then is when the problem begins. So let's see what happens, and what are the dangers of algal bloom. Algal bloom, it's mostly when we talk about algal bloom, most laymen will say that yeah, it looks unsightly and it emits foul odor. Those are the points which is hear from common people, but you will find that those are the least of our worries, as algal bloom causes many other dangerous stuff than that. Imagine a lake. Imagine a lake full of life, and suddenly a nutrition spike occurs. Excess of nitrogen, phosphorus are available in the lake suddenly, and since it is a stagnant water body, the nutrients have no other option to escape out. The nutrients get locked in the water body, and what happens is that this algae feed on these nutrients and grow, and when they grow to unlimited levels, this they start to clog up the gills of the fish. The fish suffocate and die, and visibility of the water is reduced. The fish can't even see to feed anything, eat anything in front of them. The fish can't hunt, they can't do anything. They are basically trapped in their own habitat. And other than that, harmful algal blooms, the cyanobacteria, some kind of algae, they create toxins which they release in the water. And sometimes what happens is that some kind of fishes and marine fauna, aquatic fauna, consume this algae. And for example, a snail eats this algae, and a fish eats this snail. And when humans later consume this fish, we also suffer problems. We also suffer from the toxic effects of the algae. So hence it is detrimental that we uh, we should consider it as our problem rather than the problem of the organisms present in the water body. It ultimately affects us. So, and other than that, uh, the problem doesn't end when this algae die. A new kind of problem begins when they start to die off. What happens is that once the algal bloom occurs and the algae consume every nutrition present in the water column, once they reach a stable level, they start to die off. And when they die off, the bacteria present in the water body start, the aerobic bacteria basically start to decompose this algae. And when they start to decompose this algae, the oxygen which was already reduced by the presence of algae in the water surface, they start to deplete that also. So what occurs is that even after being dead, when this algae start to decompose, they create more problems. The oxygen, remaining few oxygen is also uh, ended up by the bacteria, and the fishes, marine organisms all start to die. So, and other apart from that, as I previously mentioned, the algae are not very pleasing to see. They are like green, mucky odor. They emit foul odor, and they are not a great sight to see around your property. And so, what are the causes of algal bloom? Normally, as I mentioned you earlier, that a healthy lake or pond ecosystem contains all kind of plants, algae, and animals which keep each other in check. What happens? What I have observed in many of the lakes in rural areas of Mumbai, India, and even urban areas, the lakes, they don't have any aquatic plants in them. None of these floating plants except water hyacinth is present. Actually, water hyacinth is an invasive plant. Everybody should know that kind of basic knowledge at least. Water hyacinth is an invasive plant. It is much worse than algae. But it is easy to eradicate than algae. So what happens is that this a healthy ecosystem should contain submerged, immersed, and floating plants. Usually, such plants are not observed in any of our lakes in and around India. So that's the biggest problem we have with our lakes. When the plants are not present, they don't the algae have no competition basically. So they start to proliferate excessively when even a slight nutrition spike occurs. And other than that, the all the lakes, ponds in India are leased out to private contractors who breed fishes in them for commercial purposes. And what these guys do, that this contractor people do, is that they don't have any idea about the biomass of the fish which they are releasing in the water, and hence they dump the feed of the fish into the lakes directly. uh, what they do is they dump excessive food because they use fodders of pigs and cattles which are like available very cheaply, and the fishes also consume them easily, so they basically dump it. It's a cheap source of food so they don't mind dumping it into the water. Other than that, sewage water is freely released into every lake and ponds, and runoff water from the due to concretization in urban areas, and from nearby fields in rural areas. What you can say, that fertilizers, excess fertilizers, the stuff which we present, everything gets washed down to the lakes, ultimately end up in the lake or pond in the nearby areas. So these are the few sources of excess nutrition present in the soil, present which enter the lake or the pond. Apart from this, the naturally nutritions enter the water also, but it is never in excess. This kind of anthropogenic activities introduce this kind of excess nutrients into the freshwater body. And the third thing is warm water. As I mentioned, that these kind of lakes do not have any floating plants to cover them. Floating plants are important because they cover the water surface, providing a cool habitat for the fishes. The thing is that warm water usually always has low amount of dissolved oxygen, and cold water, the water present in the depth, has high amount of dissolved oxygen. So when the water is cold, the water has the ability to retain more amount of dissolved oxygen. So that's the reason we prefer having 30% or 40% of cover of floating plants on the water surface. Also, algae prefer warmer water bodies. So when there are no water floating plants to cover the water surface, the water heats up, and this leads to and along with the nutrition spike, this leads to algal bloom. And algal bloom, when it increases, it forms a thick layer of mat, and this mat in turn absorbs more heat, and this heat is distributed into the water, which gets even more warmer, and this is like a cycle, and more warm water and more algae, and more algae, more warm water. This goes on continuing until the nutrition doesn't get depleted. So, and the fourth point is, yeah, lack of competition from other plants. There are no plants present in any ponds or lakes which I have observed which face this kind of troubles, algal bloom problems. The long-term solutions. Long-term solutions, as far as I know, the only long-term stable solution would be to restore the pond ecology uh, to what it once was, to introduce the aquatic plants, and the fauna will automatically follow. This fauna will keep the flora in check, and the flora will help the fauna to thrive. So that's the only available long-term solutions. The plants, they will absorb the excess nutrition, excess sunlight will be absorbed, used by the aquatic plants, the floating plants. Introducing emergent and floating plants will compete. Plants provide serious competition to the algae. uh, they have millions of years of evolution to their advantage. Algae, usually we think that algae are invincible, but no, algae are not invincible. And if you notice in an healthy ecosystem, this kind of vascular plants are what dominate the water body, like lotus, this emergent plants. This highly evolved plants are what dominate the water body, because they have evolved to that extent that they are highly developed in their habitat. Even algae can compete with this kind of plants. So they are highly specialized in their field. We only need to reintroduce them into those areas which was previously theirs only. We are the one who we cut off them. Usually the water plants, what they do is like, they are like pretty to see, but they're like minor problem to navigate underwater, and most people don't like swimming in areas with plants, because they think that snakes hide in them, those kind of stuff. Like it fishing, during fishing the nets can get tangled in those kind of plants. Those kind of problems happen usually. So hence the villagers and people, they intentionally cut off this kind of plants from the water, nearby river beds, so lake bed. So hence the problem with aquatic plants. They don't realize that they are harming themselves in the end ultimately, when they cut this kind of plants from the water body. So what are the advantages this kind of vascular aquatic plants have over algae? As I mentioned that this emergent and floating plants are highly evolved. They have millions of years of evolution to their advantage. They have like highly specialized mechanisms to compete with other plants. So what are what advantages they have? So the first advantages, emergent and submerged plants have over algae, is that they are directly anchored to the soil, the substrate, the riverbed or the lake bed. What happens is that algae can only access the nutrition which are dissolved in the water column. Once those nutrients end up, the algae has no more access to the nutrition and it dies off, begins to die off. But this submerged and emergent plant are anchored to soil, and soil is always rich in nutrition. They have full 24 by 7 access to this nutrition, and hence they can efficiently compete with algae. And a limiting factor, generally plants require nitrogen, phosphorus, and a few amount of iron and manganese to support themselves. So iron and manganese are the limiting nutrition present in the for plants, even in water body or in terrestrial body. The thing is that iron is present in soil only. The amount of iron present in the water column is very negligible. Iron, in order to for iron to be present in the water column, the sunlight should hit the soil, and the iron locked up in the soil reacts with the sunlight, gets energy from the sunlight, and it frees itself from the soil and gets distributed in the water column. So when floating plants of any kind are present, they don't allow the sunlight to touch the soil only. So the iron gets locked up into the soil, and the amount of iron present in the water column is very less. So the algae can only grow to a few extent with the amount of iron present in the water. If there are no plants available, and when the sun easily reaches the substrate, the iron gets released tremendously. This excess of iron in turn leads to algal bloom. And third thing is that the emergent and floating plants can use the full spectrum of sunlight. That is, even if the sun is in full 12 o'clock noon full brightness, they can use the same. They can use the sunlight, and even in cloudy day, this kind of plants can easily use the sunlight to grow. So the season, weather, nothing matters to them. Algae, on the other hand, are very specific. They have a narrow spectrum which they can use, and if they don't get that spectrum of light, they don't thrive. And as I previously mentioned, floating plants can essentially block out the sunlight available to algae. Are present in the water column, and floating plants are present in the water surface. So floating plants have the direct access to sunlight. Once a floating plant leaves out, once a lotus gives out its leaves in the surface, the algae present below the leaf doesn't have any access to the sunlight. So a mere presence of a lotus leaf can deter algae from growing. So that much advantage just being present is there to this plant. So other than that, floating plants and emergent plants use atmospheric CO2. That is the atmosphere, the CO2 present in the air, in the atmosphere. And algae can only use the CO2 which are dissolved in the water column. And the water column has a specific capacity of storing CO2. It can't. The CO2 amount of CO2 is fixed. Once this algae blooms, they use up all the CO2. CO2 cannot recharge itself until the night when the plants themselves use oxygen to breathe and they release CO2. So it's a cycle basically, but CO2 is a limiting factor in water column. But for emergent and floating plants, it is not a limiting factor. CO2 is available to them 24/7. Even a slight amount of sunlight and is present, they start to photosynthesize because CO2 is present in the atmosphere. In these days, it is present much more than what it usually was. So they have a competitive edge there also. And uh, this vascular plants, emergent, floating, or submerged, any kind, have allopathy properties. That is, this kind of plants produce chemicals which inhibit any kind of competition. It may inhibit the growth of another plant, another aquatic plant, or algae also. So they release these chemicals in the nearby surrounding areas. This chemical does not allow any other plant to grow in the nearby area. So that's that kind of advantage. This kind of plants have, aquatic plants, vascular plants. Algae, as I've mentioned previously, produces toxins. It does not produce phytochemicals. Like, it does not produce allopathic chemicals. Those toxins are only harmful for animals and humans, not to plants. So that's the difference there. Caution regarding emergent and floating plants. So what happens is that when I say we should plant more aquatic plants, it doesn't mean that we should plant every kind of aquatic plants in every kind of water body. Aquatic plants are a huge branch, special branch of study. What happens is that in the zeal that people may misunderstand my message, and they will introduce invasive plants like water hyacinth and those kind of stuff into every water bodies, and they will be causing more harm to the ecosystem than it previously faced. So what I mean by planting aquatic plants is that every kind of lake or pond is usually associated with a nearby river which supplies water to it, and these rivers have many kind of aquatic plants which naturally many years ago, before anthropogenic activities were increased, this kind of rivers, when they flow their banks, when they flood, this lakes and ponds, they get deposited with the plants from those rivers, and those are the local native aquatic plants present in the rivers, which then grow in the ponds and lakes. In the previous 100 years or so, due to industrialization, the flow of the rivers has been dammed up, and those kind of stuff happened, and the river no longer floods, and the float, even the inlet to the pond to the lake has been cut off from the river. So what happens is that during summer, most of these lakes and ponds dry up completely, and the aquatic plants end up dead, and the fishes also end up dead. But due to leasing out these ponds, the contractors introduce these fishes again inside. So uh, the plants, however, do not get, year after year after, when this kind of stuff happens, the aquatic plants life gets ultimately destroyed. So that's the reason many ponds and lakes do not have plants, aquatic plants. I have noticed. So what we should do is that you should plant local native aquatic plants. We should find out that which pond or lake is associated with which nearby water body, from where it used to get its water, and plants from those specific areas should be allowed to be planted in those areas, rather than planting even a plant from Assam. Assam northeast states are usually rich with plants, aquatic plants. So a plant from northeast state should not be planted in Mumbai, in a lake in Mumbai. That is also considered invasive. A Mumbai lake or pond should receive plants from nearby river, from which, like, nearby river, a species from the local nearby river. So that level of endemism or local native aquatic plants I'm speaking about. So don't plant any kind of, just because I said aquatic plant doesn't mean you plant anything. So please keep that in mind. And other than that, short-term solutions. So suppose what happens is that usually the situation gets out of control many times, and we are like left to search for short-term solutions. And so we will focus on this short-term solutions for now. However, it is my observation that short-term solutions are not the best permanent solutions for this kind of problems. uh, Once, however, we will go through them. So the first one is Nualgi. Nualgi is a company based in Bangalore. Many such companies are present around the globe, but Nualgi is a pretty famous Indian company, and what their product does is that uh, this Nualgi bottle contains nutrients and silica. Silica is a limiting factor in freshwater ecosystem, because silica is not present that in that amount. So what we do is that for every 1 liter of for every 2 or 5 million liters of lake water, we uh, drop 1 liter of this new algae solution into the water. This causes the diatoms, as I previously mentioned, were those algae who use silica as their cell wall. So this kind of algae, they then start to bloom, and they start to compete with the cyanobacteria, or those blue green algae, those green color algae. The diatomous algae are brown colored usually, and they are like not usually harmful, not harmful at all actually. They uh, they start to bloom. Diatoms start to grow because of the presence of excess of silica. Silica algae, blue green algae or cyanobacteria or other kind of algae do not use silica. So the new algae solution, which contains silica, is only used by the diatoms, which are naturally present in every freshwater ecosystem, but they don't get silica that much to bloom. So once we introduce silica into the ecosystem, the diatoms algae start to bloom, and they quickly take over the harmful algae, the cyanobacteria, those kind of blue green algae. And diatoms are useful because diatoms are eaten by zooplanktons. So they are quickly consumed by zooplankton. Diatoms, zooplanktons like diatoms, because diatoms are like pretty healthy compared to those cyanobacteria and blue green algae. And those diatoms also, when they die, since they are heavy now, they start to fall into the river bed and they get stored there only. Uh, so diatoms are pretty good, and the principle is that we use one algae to compete with another algae to remove another algae. So that's the basic principle in here. Diatom is also an algae. Cyanobacteria is also an algae. Diatom is more preferable compared to that cyanobacteria. So this is one solution, and it is pretty successful as far as I've seen from many people. Many people were using it in their own ponds to and reported good results. We need to try it sometime. Barley extract. Barley extract is mostly used in European countries. Barley is a crop, as you know. Previously, barley straw used to be tied in a bundle and used to be thrown into the water body, into the lake or pond. And this what is happened is that the bacteria present in the water starts to decompose those straw, and the straw slowly releases hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is an acidic acid, and algae do not like acid at all. Acidic condition they do not grow. Alkaline condition they prefer, and one hydrogen peroxide slowly is released by the decomposing barley straw, which kills off all the algae. However, and another better alternative is the barley extract. Barley extract is the extract of the barley straw, and it also releases hydrogen peroxide slowly, which kills off all the algae. So that's the dosage they prefer. Every company gives a different dosage. For this company, this was the dosage available. It is not that much. So you can see that is the new algae and barley extract are both good methods, natural methods, compared to the other methods which we are going to see. Potassium permanganate. Potassium permanganate also is mostly used to, like, in aquarium actually. Potassium permanganate to deal with algae problem. Potassium permanganate, what it is that it turns the alkaline water into acidic water, which is not tolerated by algae at all. So that also kills off the algae. Other than that, algicides, specific chemicals which specifically kill algae are present. However, the thing is that algicides are, example was the of algicide was copper sulfate. Copper sulfate was introduced in a lake in America. What happened is that it turned out that the copper killed out all the algae. Along with that, it also killed the aquatic animals present in the water also. So hence it was banned. It was never tried again. There are a few other algicides present in the market. However, chemical method of dealing with algae is not reported. It is not preferred. Actually, it is frowned upon. So no government agency in any country uses chemical methods to stop algal bloom. Flocculants. We will deal with flocculants in the next slide. Flocculant is flocculant is something which like as I told you, algae is a unicellular it is microscopic organism. What happens is that if a water hyacinth cover it becomes like a if a water hyacinth covers the lake surface, we can usually easily like collect it and throw it out. But how do we collect a unicellular organism? There lies the problem with algae. So what we do is that we introduce some stuff which binds with this algae, and once it binds with the algae, they keep on sticking to each other, forming larger masses. And when the size increases of this bundle, they start to submerge into the water. That's the basic principle behind clay flocculation. Flocculation are some sticky stuff which binds with the algae, which sticks with the algae and keeps on sticking with the algae until its size get big enough, its mass get big enough to drown. So that's the basic principle. And it was like many studies have been carried out with this clay flocculation method. It's the most popular and cheap method I found. And as you can see in the bottom left image, that's the clay slurry which they have prepared. It is a mixture of clay and sometimes a polymer is used, special polymer, which increases the binding ability of the clay to the algae. This clay is then sprayed into the water body. You can see that researcher in the top left image. is spraying the clay slurry into the water in the water surface directly above the algal bloom. That's so that is for marine ecosystems. This method is used for dealing with marine algae. However, alternative has been recently tested in China, which is used for freshwater. We will deal. I'll show you where it is. Like as you can see in the first statement, algal clay aggregates form when algal and clay suspensions are mixed in the presence of an electrolyte. Electrolyte and a clay is mixed, and it is sprayed on the water surface. This clay then sticks with the algae and drowns the algae. So this method is highly effective because 90% of toxic or algae present in the water surface, water column, anywhere in the water body, it for the clay grabs it and falls into the like drowns into the river bed or the lake bed. So it is a very effective method and very low dosage is also preferred. Like 30 parts per million is known to be of clay is highly effective in dealing with them. And we can increase the stickiness of the clay by introducing special polymers, which then will make the process even more easier, which will make the clay, the amount of clay which we will use when we add the special polymer will reduce even more. And what happens is that once this clay and this algae aggregate drowns into the riverbed, the algae starts to die off because algae do not like clay, and since the algae can no longer access the sunlight, they eventually die off. So this is a preferred method, and it is used extensively in America, in the Florida area region specifically. And for freshwater, the Chinese research paper which I studied pointed out gave this formula, which is that any local sediment of clay can be used along with chitosan. Chitosan is the crustacean cell derivative, matlab, some shrimp cover or crab's shell, powder of crab shell, those sort snail shell. It's a crustacean derivative. The chitosan and the clay, along with that polyaluminum chloride, is used. And when it is sprayed on the water body for this is for freshwater. Thus, those algae, they stick with this mixture and they drown into the pond bed. And other than that, aeration method is also used. However, it is a slightly costly method because large amount of electricity is required to keep on running this fountains, these pumps. However, it is also a eco-friendly method in the sense that the wildlife is usually not affected by this method. Agitation of the surface. What happens is that when you continually when this water surface is continuously agitated by this aeration, the sunlight gets refracted back into the atmosphere. Instead of going inside the water, the sunlight gets bounced back. The sunlight usually gets bounced back. So that's one advantage. And other than that, as I mentioned previously, algae do not like moving water. That's the reason algae are not usually present in rivers. They are present, but they are not present. They do not cause algal bloom in rivers because flowing water is not a perfect place for an algae to grow. As long as the water surface is getting agitated, the algae do not grow in that area. And this mixed agitation of water also breaks the stratification in a pond or a lake. A pond usually is divided into three areas: upper epihelion and metahelion and hemolian. The deep part of the lake contains more nutrients but less amount of dissolved oxygen, and the middle, it goes on reducing, the nutrition goes on reducing as they reach the surface, and the oxygen content goes on increasing as they reach the surface. But so what this does is that it breaks up those stratification and it keeps on mixing the water. That is why it does not allow the algae to establish itself in the pond. And
Jehu,
yeah, yeah.
is there any limitations of the aeration machines or that equipment you shown?
Yeah, limitation is mostly economic only. The aeration method is very good actually. That is the reason it is used widely. But the thing is that you can't cover a huge lake with aerators everywhere. You need to provide wires. Those the It's the infrastructure problem is the only thing that limits aeration method. Other than that, aeration method is a perfectly stable method. However, it is not a long-term solution. You understand, I guess, because you will have to do this every year, every day, every hour. So, not a preferred method. Harvester. Harvester. It is used for dealing with the algae mat present in the water surface. It does not deal with the algae present in the water column. It only deals with the mats of algae found in the water surface when an algal bloom occurs. And in India, it has been tried out extensively. In Hyderabad, for example, there was a lake called that is a lake called Hussain Sagar Lake. It's a pretty famous lake actually, and citizens have complained about the green color of water, algae, excess algae, and trash floating in the surface. So the government used this kind of harvester to remove this algae from the lake. And you can see how much money we spend to maintain a lake. 1003 and 1034 crores in the past 15 years was used to clean this specific single lake. So that's a huge amount. And and no concrete measures have been taken. Only short-term solutions do not uh, give a convincing result. So long-term solutions is what we should be focusing for. Short-term solutions will drain our money only. They don't will not provide a clean lake in any sense. And other than that, there was another example that is of Anusupa Lake in Odisha. So what happens is that this lake is a oxbow lake. Oxbow lake is are lakes which receive water from nearby rivers. They were once a part of the river. However, when the river changed their course, these lakes are what remaining are the remaining relic of the river's course, ancient course. So it is an example of a oxbow lake. And Anuspa lake. What happened is that the excess nutrition which was available previously, it is available from the nearby water fields, from the farmland. It ends up getting washed up in the lake. And what happened here what happened was that algae was not the problem. Anusupa lake is a wetland actually. So at wetland there were like 20-30 different species of aquatic plants, vascular plants, not algae. They started to overgrow that much that even a boat could not pass into this lake. So government used that's my point actually. That thing is that algae and algae is bad. Vascular plants are aquatic plants are good. It is nothing like that. Even vascular plants overtake a lake when they are dominant. So it's the fauna, the aquatic fauna are the stuff which keep these plants also in check. So what happens is that what the government introduced this machine, this weed removing machine to harvest the excess weed also. Even weeds, those aquatic plants also can overtake a lake when nutrition is provided extensively. The main problem we deal with is excess of nutrition due to anthropogenic activities. What the like In this lake, what I read was that previously the lake used to overflow, causing wiping out the excess weed growth. The force of the water will like drag the excess weed growth along with it to the sea. So the lake used to get every year the weeds used to overgrow. The river during monsoon used to overflow and drag the weeds along with it and itself and maintain the lake that way. However, due to damming the Mahana the river, which feeds this lake, the water flow reduced in the river, and this kind of problem started popping up. So that is what happens when we alter the course of nature. So uh, that's one example actually of this machine using in India, of being used in India. And other alternatives which I found but have not been used that much are of glucose. Glucose is actually an extremely recent one. Glucose The bacteria present in the water body are naturally present in the water body. However, bacteria do not compared to bacteria, algae have better competitive edge over bacteria, and that's the reason when nutrition spike occurs, algae grow in excess. However, when a group of scientists decided that what we feed the bacteria, what if we introduce glucose into the ecosystem and see what happens. So in the right slide, in the image, you can see in the right side of the glass, a clear water is present, and in the left side, a water with algae is present. So in the right side, the right one, the scientist you took water from two in two flasks from a water body, and both these flasks contained algae as well as bacteria. In the right flask, what they did was they provided glucose to the in the water. So this bacteria started to feed on the glucose early, and they started to bloom, and their population increased tremendously compared to the algae. So after that, when we introduce nitrogen and phosphorus, the nutrients into this water, the algae do not are not present in that amount to compete with the bacteria. The bacteria are present in large amount. So the bacteria start to use this nitrogen and phosphorus, and the water is clear usually. It looks clear usually. So that's the reason. That is the principle of behind this method. It is that we feed the bacteria so that bacteria fights for us with the algae. That's the principle, basic principle in here. However, it is not tested in a natural environment. It only under laboratory conditions was this test performed. So that's the reason I have kept it in the alternative slide. And other than that, is ultrasound. Ultrasound, it is also a recent method. However, like most of the people reported good results with this. So what happens is that cyanobacteria as a buoyancy system. It has a vacuole. It functions similar like a submarine. A vacuole, when the bacteria, during the daytime, the bacteria rises to the surface from the bottom of the river, lake bed. That time the vacuole, the vacuole is usually filled with water, so that during the night time this algae they descend into the water column. So they fill their vacuole, this empty bag, with water. So say they start to drown into the water, and during daytime when the sunlight comes, they empty the vacuole, they remove the water, and hence they become lightweight, and they start to float into the water surface to reach the sun. So this migration takes place daily in the water surface of the cyanobacteria. So what they did is that range of sound, a specific frequency of sound was to be continuously played by this machine, which causes the bacteria to rupture. You must have seen that specific singers might be singing, opera singers. When they sing in these movies, they show that the glass begins to crack because it is called reverb. I don't know what was resonance. It is called the phenomenon is called resonance. That is that if the frequency matches with the natural frequency of that object, it starts to break. That's the reason people in some stadiums, the clapping hands is not allowed, because if the people start to clap the hands in a specific frequency, the roof of the auditorium will fall off. That even it is that powerful. So that's the phenomenon which this machine uses, ultrasound machine. When this specific frequency of sound is used, the vacuoles which the cyanobacteria use gets ruptured. So though they no longer can rise above, they start to drown and die. So, and it is also safe to the aquatic life. It was tested, and the thing is that a specific species of algae have specific frequencies. So we need to study the frequency of the algae which we are dealing with, and then introduce the ultrasound machine. And the thing, and this machine also has a perimeter around which it can function. The machine is placed in the central area, and a perimeter, that is the range of the machine from. So large number of machine is needed for a huge lake, but for a small pond, one or two machine is suffices for our purposes. And it is marketed by a few. There are many models of machine available in the market right now. So it is a good method also. And mixing method is based on the same principle as the aeration method. That is, we need to continuously agitate the water surface. We need to break the stratification of the lake, the water column. That's the same principle which the aerator uses. However, the machine here uses a paddle-like structure. These paddles keep on rotating the water like this. The paddles, it functions like a wheel. They mix the water, continuously mix the water. So, and the wear and tear of this machine is higher because it breaks easily. Because breaking the water surface of surface tension of water is no joke. It is very hard labor to do for those machine also. So continuous replacement of this machine needs to take place, and that's one of the drawback of this machine. So aeration method is much easier compared to mixing method. And so I recently got a chance to collect the parameter of a lake, typical lake from around Mumbai. So that's we will find out what are the common problems which are faced by lakes in Mumbai or in India basically. The first parameter which I got was the pH. pH was seen in 9.20 range. That is a highly alkaline pH. A normal lake, the normal range is mentioned that 6.5 to 8.5 is usually preferred. That is around the neutral part. What happens is that alkaline pH are it's preferred by the algal for algal growth, and the algae do not tolerate acidic pH. Neither do the aquatic life do, but they can withstand higher level of acidity than algae. So algae are very sensitive to acidic water. So algae are the first stuff which begins to die off when the water begins to go to acidic level. So that's the reason those barley extract method introduces hydrogen peroxide into the water, because acidic and phosphate salts, as I mentioned, potassium permanganate, those kind of salt also, they react with the carbon calcium carbonate, which is the alkaline, which provides the alkaline water. So they react with it and convert the water into the acidic water. That is, they begin to lower the pH, which algae do not like. And other factor is that dissolved oxygen. The dissolved oxygen of the lake was observed to be 6 milligram per liter. The normal range for a healthy lake or a pond is 10 to 12 milligram per liter. And dissolved oxygen of 6 is not extremely bad. However, it is just in the point of going berserk. Like, it can, if it falls into anywhere below that, the aquatic life, we will start to see the fishes dying off. So Noalgi claims to treat this kind of dissolved oxygen problems, because diatoms, when they increase, they start to produce oxygen tremendously. So Noalgi can treat this dissolved oxygen factor. And NH4, ammonium level, because ammonium level is in high because algae, although it uses nitrogen, it also dies off in masses. Algae blooms in high number and is also dies off in high number. So when it dies off, the nitrogen is again released into the same lake. So there is like the nitrogen gets on circulating into that same water only. So ultimately, the problem is not fixed in here. The only way to remove the nitrogen or any kind of excess nutrition from the lake is through birds. Like, what the birds do is they feed on the plant which store the nitrogen in their body. And these plants or animals, when they consume it, they migrate, and they excrete this nutrition in faraway places. So slowly, steadily, this nutrition goes on depleting in the lake, from the lake to the other outside of the this lake. So that's the only way to remove. What happens in algal bloom at this kind of lake is that when the pond possesses only fishes and algae, the fishes will eat algae and they will excrete the same algae in the same lake, and the algae will use the nitrogen and it will die off in the same lake only. The nutrition keeps on cycling in that same lake only. So the nitrogen level will fluctuate, but it will never go down. So that's the problem. So conclusion is that Noalgae and barley extract are the only natural short-term and cost-effective solution available. Clay flocculation method is also available but it is a manual method, so it involves labor. So the money involved is the cost will go on increasing with those as we go about the other methods which I have mentioned. And Noalgae and barley extract, what we need to do is just we need to introduce this chemical in the water and we are done. Those chemicals, those algae and those barley extract solution will do the rest of the work for us. There is no need for introducing any labor or any kind of stuff. So those are the cost effective methods which I've seen. And other than that, in order to provide a end solution to this, we need to first prevent stuff. As you have heard this quote, prevention is also always better than cure. Preventing runoff water by creating bunds before the water, like suppose a lake is present in an area, the areas regions surrounding this a lake should be we should introduce bunds and ditches which will cause during monsoon season when the water starts to run off, this ditch the water will enter these ditches and then from there it will percolate into the groundwater. So that's those kind of stuff can be done. And other than that, sewage water should be treated before being released into this lake, so the nutrition content gets stabilized. And other than that, fish feed, excess fish feed or any kind of feed should be highly monitored before releasing. Because people usually dump the fish feed and go away. Many in a single day, 10 to 15 kilograms of fish feed is dumped like nothing, and it also costs like nothing. So they don't have any cons about dumping those kind of fish feed into the lakes, and this fish feed also spikes up the nutrition level. And the final statement will be restoring the pond ecology. Ultimately, in order to stop any kind of problem in any kind of situation in earth, we need to bring it back to the level it once was, just before anthropogenic activities or any human interference of any kind happened. So that's the message for the day. We don't need to do anything. The nature was perfect in its own before we started to mess with it. Like we started to build dams, and this dams stopped the migration of fishes to spawn. The fishes usually go upstream to lay eggs to the place where they were born, into the high up into the mountains. And when we build dams, these fishes they no longer can migrate, and the species get to die off, and the population genetic exchange does not happen. And we usually think that anything which is not pleasing to our eyes, it means that it needs to go away. It is not like that. You may not like it, but nature is like that. We should learn to live with nature rather than designing it according to our convenience, those kind of stuff. That thank you. That's my presentation for the day, and hope
Okay.
it went well.
Thank you. Thank you, Jehu, for delivering such a nice information on algal bloom. Definitely, अगर एंथ्रोपोजेनिक एक्टिविटीज हमने रोक दिए सो नेचर कैन रिवाइव एंड वो खुद को सेल्फ सस्टेनेबल कर सकता है डेफिनेटली. एंड वी ऑलवेज टॉक अबाउट अ टेरेस्ट्रियल इकोसिस्टम दैट वी शुड प्रोटेक्ट एंड कंजर्व द टेरेस्ट्रियल इकोसिस्टम, बट we should also protect the aquatic ecosystem because both are the equally important. And many time I saw that कि जो nominative aquatic plants है, लोगों को लगता है कि wow, the flowers of that plant is looking very good and the color of that flower is very attracting, so it's looking very nice pond. But जैसा आपने बताया कि हर सुंदर चीज अच्छी हो ये जरूरी नहीं है. And we should also plant local native species in while doing aquatic ecosystem exploration. So that is very important for us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this information and detailed information. You did a very great research, and I hope कि जो लोग इस सेशन को जिसने देखा होगा उनको एक आइडिया आया होगा कि what is the aquatic ecosystem and what are the role and what are the difficulties to grow that aquatic ecosystem and to run that aquatic ecosystem. So thank you very much, Jehu.
Yeah, thank you.